how concerned is he about impeachment if they get this majority?
Well, we've already seen this movie. They've already tried it twice. I'm certain they would try it again.
President Trump won't be on the ticket in the 2026 midterms, so GOP leaders are discussing ways to turn out the MAGA faithful. One way to do that, talk up the prospects that Trump could be impeached for a record third time if Democrats take back the House, even though Democratic leaders are so far wary of doing so. My new reporting this morning, my colleague Sarah Ferris details how Trump and GOP leaders are plotting their midterm strategy, trying to woo key candidates, including Governor Brian Kemp for a Georgia Senate run. But not all Republicans think the strategy of talking up a potential Trump impeachment is enough to win.
If the Republican campaign message in the midterms is vote for House Republicans and vote for Republican candidates for Senate to stop the Democrats from impeaching Trump, the American people are not going to care because...
You see, and it becomes painfully obvious, right? They don't have a plan. There is no attack. There is no strategy. There are no ideas. It's just be anti-whatever, right? Be anti-Trump. Be anti-border security. Be anti-sending illegal immigrants home. Pick your poison. It's just an amazing thing that the right has pivoted onto these issues that are relatively mainstream, and the left has nowhere to go right now, right? They're kind of just flailing around, going back to impeachment. The immigrant guy, the Maryland man guy story was just an absolute disaster. I mean, talk about picking the wrong horse on that one. I'm sure, if they just would have maybe taken their time, they probably could have found somebody, that got deported and maybe didn't deserve it as much as this guy, but it was, that was just such a flub on their part. But again, what are their ideas? They sit on the steps of the Capitol, or whatever the hell they were sitting for 24 hours or 12 hours. They grandstand with 24-hour speeches and say nothing. They're not saying anything. They're just saying the words, the buzz phrases. And be in mind, if you're watching this, for the most part, you're probably not listening to and reading other comments on other pages and stuff like that. The people still believe it, right? You still have a good solid 40% that are just absolutely, Trump deranged, and they're in the Trump deranged, woke mind virus, whatever you want to call it. They're still deeply, deeply embedded, and they hate Trump, the administration, and everything that it stands for. And they can't see, when you talk about guys teetering, like talking about a Jimmy Dore or Bill Maher or stuff like that, like those are people that were historically on the left that can kind of they give a little bit of wiggle room. That is few and far between. Those are the outliers. That is not the norm when it comes to the modern day left. There is no wiggle room on their side.
They've seen that show twice, and it didn't matter. It won't work. No.
My excellent panel is back. Look, midterm elections, as we know, are typically very painful for a party in power. We have problems with the economy, concerns about Trump overreach. Democrats are very confident that things will change next November. However, this is a small map. This is a battleground where very few districts are truly at play. There are only 3 Republicans in districts in which Kamala Harris won, which is perhaps why they want to figure out ways Republicans do to animate the base and win a potentially close election here. Look at how they talk about impeachment polls historically among the American public. The first Trump impeachment, just 51% of Americans thought that was not the way to go. Clinton impeachment, 65% of Americans at the time did not think it was the way to go. Even Nixon, as they were moving down that road, 51% thought it was not the way to go. It was different after January 6th. The majority of voters viewed it that way. That was a different situation, of course. However, that explains to you why they're trying to amp up the base. What are you hearing about the way that Trump and the Republicans are viewing their chances in the midterms?
Listen, I think they're concerned. Obviously, the economy is going to be the biggest issue. It was certainly in the last election. And Republicans are concerned that they're going down this road of tariffs. What is the policies that they're going to be able to do, especially when you look at DOJ cutting jobs kind of across the country? But this...
Yeah, but to that point, the job market was doing really well. So, if you want to, I'll put this out there and then we could play it back and see how it goes. The way I'm looking at it, the way I'm analyzing everything right now, I think relatively soon we will have a tariff win. Somebody will come to the table and sign a deal. Maybe India, possibly. That would be great. That is going to push China into a corner. Once that gets the ball rolling, you're going to see some flutterings in the stock market. Everything's going to start to percolate, start to pump up, especially with the good jobs report that just came out. I think the stock market will start roaring up. I think that inflation is going to stay low, probably keep low. If you have if the Fed then steps in and takes maybe a quarter percentage point off, you're at the cusp of having a boom. We are at the cusp of having a boom. And I think what's going to end up happening, and let me just put on my hat right now and pontificate for a minute. What I think is going to end up happening is all of this stuff's going to turn. The tariff, the inflation staying low, the possibly the Fed coming in and giving a little bump. Then what they're going to do is they're going to justify the incoming revenues from tariffs for a massive, massive tax cut. So he's been floating around the no tax on anyone making less than 150, which would be a phenomenal. Could you imagine going into the midterms with the majority of people making $150,000 or less, and as they're walking into the polls, they see their pay is gonna increase by 30%? Could you imagine that? I mean, at that point, you're pretty much buying votes, right? But if you're doing it with the Doge cutbacks and the incoming revenues from tariffs, and you balance this thing out, I mean, they're going to get destroyed. If the plan that, from what I see, if the plan that they are thinking about implementing takes effect, I think it would be a massive, massive Republican landslide. There is no way anyone's going to look at their paycheck with a 30% increase and walk in and pull the lever for a Democrat. They might just stay home, but I can't see them going in and having somebody go in to try to reverse. I really wonder how this is going to play out, right? Because are the Democrats going to vote against this when they try to push this through? Even if let's say they don't do the zero tax on less than 150, he could probably. I was doing some figures with Grok and other chat bots, and I said with incoming tariffs revenue, Doge eliminating the waste and fraud that they're doing, if you average all that out, what would be the amount that you could lower the federal tax and still maintain the same amount of revenues? And it was a pretty good. It was, I think, about a 12% decrease in tax revenues. That's still massive. Can you imagine, like another 12 to 15% of your pay coming to a person just before the midterm elections? I don't know how they would even stand a chance against something like that.
Impeachment issue, I think, is red meat for the Trump base. This is something that would galvanize his base to get them out, get them into rallies. This is the kind of fighting mode that Trump likes, and the idea that Democrats are so out of touch. And that's why I think you really see leadership in the Democratic Party saying, like, hey guys, no, let's not talk about this.
Let's talk about the economy as well. But what was interesting that is there was one of the most vulnerable Senate Democratic candidates, the Senate Democrats, John Ossoff, at a rally back home, just a town hall a couple weeks ago. He was asked about impeachment. He suggested that Trump and his actions on this cryptocurrency venture suggested that perhaps that's enough for an impeachable conduct, or at least an investigation into it. I asked him about those comments that he made.
It appears that the president's business and family are being personally enriched through this cryptocurrency venture. That kind of misconduct, I think, exceeds virtually any prior standard for that kind of inquiry in the House.
It's hard to separate the politics. Republicans are already going after you on those comments. Do you think it'll become an issue in your campaign?
Oh, I stand by those comments 100%.
I mean, we should never take impeachment off the table. We should never take where we see law breaking. We should never take accountability off the table.
I love it. Like they still can't read the room, right? Okay, yeah, you're throwing red meat to your base, but has that worked in the past to mobilize your base? What it has done is it's definitely worked in the past to mobilize the other side. You start bringing up impeachment again, especially when you don't have a there. Like you're now it's like, when you talk about the Zelensky impeachment, when they were the phone call, the perfect beautiful phone call, which I love, when you talk about that, or all the other impeachments, there was something there that people could hold on to, put their hat on, and say, all right, this is something that we can talk about. I thought it was all bullshit, but at least it's something that you can point your finger on. Tell me one Democrat right now, that crazy Indian guy that released articles of impeachment that people are backing away from now. But tell me one person that can point their finger on and say, this is what he's getting impeached over. There isn't any. There aren't any people out there that can say this is what he's getting impeached over. They're speculating, they're talking their nonsense and they're doing their spin, but they can't point to a specific topic that he would be getting impeached over. And that's a losing argument. You have to be laser focused on something. You got to give them something. You can't just throw the words out there and not give them some kind of substance.
That's the tension between what the Democratic leaders want to talk about and what a lot of members say, that they need to hold Donald Trump, what they say, accountable for going beyond Constitution.
It is a tension. You know, on one side, you have this concern in the Democratic Party.
That's the problem, right? And then what? Going beyond the Constitution. What does that mean? What does that mean? They don't have. They're rudderless right now. They don't have a narrative. They're flailing about. It's really remarkable because they're normally very fixated. They're very poignant, and they get their marching orders out and they go with it. And they're kind of just fluttering about right now, and they're going to have a rough go at this midterms if it keeps going.
Around them being too cautious and pulling their punches against the Trump administration, and really almost a yearning, mostly on the progressive base, for accountability. But on the other side, too, you've had really an inconsistency of what to focus on when it comes to that message. Do you hone in on DOGE efforts, on the economy, on tariffs, on immigration, what have you? And we're seeing the collision of those two sources of anxiety here. Those that want the party to focus on the issues, and those that actually see an opening for real accountability. What's absent in all of these conversations, though, is actually putting forth a consistent agenda, a consistent plan that you can rebut against the Trump administration here.
Can I ask you just about Trump's mindset as we head into the midterms? We're hearing that he's probably going to do a lot of rallies, endorsements. He's very focused on trying to keep the House. What's your expectation of his involvement in the midterms? Because look, Democrats actually would be happy if he was on the campaign trail.
They would, and he loves nothing more than being on the campaign trail, right? He loves those rallies, and comments like that, what you just played, that is exactly what Trump and his team want to hear. He does best when he's embattled, when he's pushing against something, when he can play the victim and say that he is being targeted. You saw what happened with his numbers. They're looking back at when that first indictment came down and how suddenly he was in the wilderness and then he became the center of gravity for the political universe and really used that and turned it into a galvanizing moment for him. If Democrats continue on this train, you better bet they're going to try to do the same thing. Whether it'll work or not, that's the
not going to try.
In the
They're
meantime,
going to.
there's a big effort to try to get some key candidates in the race. We've heard Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, flew down.
Guys, if you can give me a subscribe and a like, a share, anything would help a lot with the channel. We should be wrapping this up in momentarily. See where else they go with this.
To Atlanta over the Easter break, did meet with him and Kemp's wife. Also, other senators have been in touch with him. We heard that Trump himself had a conversation with Kemp back in February about the Senate race. There were no commitments made that we were hearing, but given that Kemp did not overturn the election in 2020 and became the whipping boy for Trump for so long.
So I mean, for the most part, this is a losing strategy. Not sure where they're going to take it. Doesn't like I said, it's not poignant. An amazing thing is when that analyst, when he was going over when he was going over explaining, there's no cohesive message. It's exactly like I was saying. I try to not watch these things before I do these videos, so everything that I'm saying is kind of like fluid and it's right off the top of my head. Again, it's not a cohesive message. They're gonna get shellacked if they continue down this road. That's just my personal opinion. Could be wrong, but I've been doing this for a while now, super into this stuff, and that's kind of what I see. Those are the tea leaves that I see that I'm reading right now. There isn't a unified message behind him. They're flailing. They're throwing out impeachment. That's only going to make him stronger if this thing goes through. And believe me, the Trump team wishes it would go through. That's why the Democrats are backing off of it right now, because they know it would only embolden, empower, and it creates that, when your team is down, that's when people start screaming. That's when people, if they're down at 30 points, then whatever, you throw in the towel, you go home. If they're down 2 or 3 points, you're in the fight, right? You're in there, you're roaring, you're getting everybody amped up. That's what they're looking for right now, and the Democrat leadership, I think, kind of knows that, which is why they backed off this impeachment thoroughly. Like pretty much, I don't think anyone who initially signed on to it, people were asking to take their names off of it. That's how bad it was getting. I think there's only 2 sponsors of the impeachment at this time coming from the House. But thanks a lot for joining me. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. We will see you again in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys.